There is a number the big trading desks would rather you never learn how to read. Not the price of silver, not the price of gold, the number that sits quietly between them. It is one of the oldest measuring sticks in all of finance, and for most of your life, nobody put it on the evening news, because the moment an ordinary saver understands it, a certain kind of story falls apart. If you are holding silver right now, or if you have been thinking about it and something keeps pulling you back, I want you to slow down and stay with me. This is not about a headline. This is about a simple piece of arithmetic that has governed these two metals for centuries, and about what happens to your position when that arithmetic snaps back toward where it has spent most of history. By the time we are done, you will understand exactly where the case and the title of this video comes from, and just as important, you will understand its honest limits, so no one can sell you a fairy tale and no one can talk you out of a sound idea. So let me give you the first real thing right now, because you did not come here to be teased. The measuring stick I am talking about is the gold to silver ratio. It simply tells you how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold. And here is the fact that starts this whole story. That ratio is not a fixed thing. It breathes. It has a range. And the two ends of that range are not close together. They are worlds apart. When you understand how far apart and where we sit inside that range today, the idea of silver reaching into the three figures stops sounding like a fantasy, and it starts sounding like nothing more than the ratio doing something it has already done before. Now, let me take you back, because this is the heart of it, and it is a true story, not a parable. Go back to the very beginning of 1980. The great metals boom of the 1970s was reaching its screaming peak. Gold had run from around $35 when the dollar was cut loose from it at the start of that decade, all the way past $800. And silver went absolutely vertical, straight up toward the $50 mark. But watch what happened to the ratio at that moment, because this is the number that matters. At that peak, it took only about 17 ounces of silver to buy a single ounce of gold. 17. Silver had run so hard, so fast, that it had nearly caught up to gold in a way we almost never see. That is the low end of the range. That is what compression looks like at its most extreme. Now, hold that picture and jump forward about a decade into the early 1990s. The boom was long dead. Silver had been left for dead with it, forgotten, unloved, sitting in the bargain bin of the financial world. And by around 1991, that same ratio had blown all the way out to roughly 100. 100 ounces of silver to buy a single ounce of gold. Think about the sheer distance between those two moments, from about 17 to about 100. That is the full breathing range of this thing. That is the fear gauge swinging from one wall to the other. And here's what I need you to feel in your gut, because the desks will never frame it this way for you. A high ratio does not mean silver is expensive. A high ratio means silver is cheap, dirt cheap, hated. It means it takes a mountain of silver to equal a little gold. And the only times in history that has been true were the moments of maximum fear and maximum disgust for the metal. So sit with what that tells you. When the ratio is stretched out toward the high end, near 100 or beyond, you are not looking at silver being overpriced. You are looking at silver on the clearance rack. And when the ratio compresses, when it falls back down toward its historical middle and its lower end, that is silver waking up. That is silver outrunning gold. And that right there is the entire arithmetic behind a three-figure silver price. It is not magic. It is not hype. It is just the low end of a range that already exists, that has already been touched, applied to a gold price that is far higher than it was the last time these metals ran together. Let me make that concrete, because this is where the case actually gets its power. When silver moves in a real bull market, it does not move alongside gold. It moves faster, much faster. It is the smaller, wilder, more volatile cousin. So in a genuine run, gold tends to grind higher, while silver explodes higher. And mechanically, arithmetically, that pulls the ratio down. Now here is the part the financial channels will not walk you through. Take a gold price near the lofty levels it lives at today. Then ask a simple question. What does silver have to be worth for that ratio to compress back toward the middle of its own historical range, let alone toward the low end it touched in 1980? You do not need me to feed you a fantasy figure. Do the arithmetic yourself with round numbers. A high gold price, divided by a ratio that falls back toward where it has spent enormous stretches of history, spits out a silver price with 3 digits in front of the decimal. That is all the case is. It is division. It is the range doing what the range does. And this is exactly why I say the case just got stronger, because two things are happening at the same time that push both sides of that division in silver's favor. On one side, gold is not sitting still. The central banks of the world, the most patient and best informed buyers on the planet, have been accumulating physical gold at a pace we have not seen in generations. For 3 straight years now, they have bought more than 1,000 tons a year, roughly double what they were buying in the decade before. Gold recently overtook the euro to become the second largest reserve asset held by central banks, behind only the dollar itself. When the numerator in that division keeps climbing, every level of the ratio implies a higher silver price underneath it. And on the other side, silver itself is being quietly drained. Let me pause here, because this is the moment to talk about protecting what you have already built, and I would be doing you a disservice if I skipped it. If you have watched the central banks pile into physical gold and thought, well, that is fine for them, they are giant institutions, I want you to hear this clearly. There is a perfectly legal, quiet way for an ordinary American retiree to do the exact same thing the central banks are doing. You can move a portion of the retirement savings you already have, the money sitting in a 401k or an IRA right now, into real physical gold and silver, held inside a self-directed account without triggering taxes and without triggering penalties. This is not some exotic loophole for insiders. If you have $100,000 or more in any retirement account, this is squarely for you. I put together a free retirement protection guide that walks through exactly how it works, step by step in plain English. If you are watching this on your television, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to jeffreedguide.com. It costs you nothing and it obligates you to nothing. Now, let me get back to why silver specifically is being drained. The silver market has run a structural supply deficit for several straight years now. That means the world is using more silver than it is digging up and recycling, year after year, and the gap gets covered by drawing down the stockpiles that already exist above ground. And here is the cruel little detail that makes silver different from gold, the one you should carry with you. Gold is hoarded. Almost every ounce of gold ever mined still exists somewhere, in a vault, in a coin, on a wrist, but silver is burned. It goes into solar panels, into electronics, into 1,000 industrial uses, spread out in tiny amounts, a sliver here, a sliver there, and most of it is simply too small and too scattered to ever be worth recovering. It gets used up and it does not come back. So while the ratio tells you silver is historically cheap, the physical market is quietly telling you the actual metal is getting harder to find. Cheap on the measuring stick and scarce in the warehouse at the same time. That is a combination that does not last forever. Now let me hit you with the midpoint of this whole thing, the part that actually changes how you should see it, because almost nobody frames it this way. When you watch silver on a screen, you are not watching the metal. You are watching paper. You are watching contracts, claims, promises, futures traded on exchanges like COMEX. And there are vastly more paper claims to silver floating around than there is metal in any vault to satisfy them. This matters enormously, and here's why. As long as almost nobody stands up and demands the actual bars, the paper price and the metal price stay glued together, and that paper price can be pushed around. And it gets pushed around. Think back to 2011, when silver had run all the way back up toward that same $50 ceiling it touched in 1980, a ceiling roughly 31 years apart, with a base beneath it about 45 years long. In a matter of days, silver fell around 30%. Nothing about the actual metal changed. No mine flooded. No factory stopped needing it. What changed was the rules of the paper game. The cost of holding those contracts got jacked up, and the leverage players were forced out all at once. The metal did not fail. The paper did. That is the enemy in this story, and I want you to see it plainly, because they profit from your not seeing it. The trading desks, the big banks, the financial media that takes its cues from them, they make their living on the churn, on the paper, on the panic. A frightened saver dumping real metal into an engineered dip is their favorite customer. And the ratio is the one number that cuts straight through all of it, because it does not care about the paper games. It just tells you, over centuries, roughly how these two metals relate. And it tells you, right now, that silver sits well above the middle of its historical range, closer to the cheap end than the expensive end. The desks will never put that on the screen for you, because a saver who understands the ratio is a saver who does not panic sell at the bottom. Let me widen the lens even further, because the ratio does not exist in a vacuum. Consider how far back this relationship runs. When the United States first set up its money, the Coinage Act of 1792 fixed silver to gold at close to 15 to 1, and that was not an arbitrary choice. It was roughly the natural ratio that had held for centuries in the ground and in the market, 15 to 1. So when you look at a ratio stretched out toward 100, you are not looking at some new normal. You are looking at a level that would have been unthinkable to the people who built our monetary system. History does not promise us a return to 15 to 1, but history screams that a ratio near 100 is an extreme, not a baseline, and extremes have a long habit of correcting. And think about what silver itself has done at the far end of that history. Its high from the start of 1980, adjusted for the decades of inflation since, sits far above its old nominal ceiling, well into the low three figures in today's money, and it has never once been reclaimed in real terms. So the level in the title of this video is not some number pulled out of thin air. In inflation-adjusted terms, silver has already been there. It simply has not been back. And notice the direction things have been leaning lately, over recent years, without me pinning it to any single day. The ratio, which had been stretched out toward those crisis extremes, has been compressing. Silver has been doing the very thing the arithmetic requires, outrunning gold, closing the gap, pulling that number back down toward its long-run middle. That is not the end of the move. That is the start of one. When silver leads, when the ratio falls, when the physical market is in deficit and the biggest buyers on earth are hoarding the partner metal, you are watching every ingredient of the three-figure case line up at once. Not a promise, an alignment. Let me be honest with you now, the way the desks never will be, because your trust matters more to me than any excited headline. This is a case. It is not a guarantee. Silver is volatile, wildly so, more volatile than gold. And that same wildness that can carry it up in a real run can carry it down hard in a shakeout, sometimes for reasons that have nothing to do with silver at all. There will be days and weeks when the paper price gets slammed and it feels like the whole thesis was wrong. It will not be wrong. It will be the paper doing what the paper does. But you have to be positioned in a way that lets you sit through it. So here is the practical part. Own the real metal, not a paper promise you cannot see. Size your position so that a sharp drop can never force you to sell. Because the people who get hurt are not the ones who are wrong about the destination. They are the ones who get shaken out of the seat before the trip is over. Do not sell into the shakeout. That is the whole discipline, right there. And now I want to give you the part one think matters most, the part almost nobody will say to you directly. Look at who already understands this. The central banks, the smart money, the patient institutions, they are already positioned. They are already buying the physical metal, hand over fist, quietly, year after year. They are not waiting for permission, and they are not waiting for a headline. Meanwhile, the mainstream, the pension funds, the financial channels, the neighbor down the street, have not caught on yet. Silver is not on the cover of the magazines. There is no line around the block at the coon shop. There is no mania. And that absence is the opportunity. Because by the time it does become obvious, by the time silver leads every news segment and every advisor is suddenly recommending it, the easy part of the move will already be behind us. That is how these things always work. You are early. Being early feels uncomfortable and lonely and uncertain, and that discomfort is precisely the price of admission. Nobody sends you an invitation. Nobody calls your house to tell you the window is open. You either see it before the crowd or you buy it from the crowd later at a much higher price. So let me bring this all the way back to where we started and answer the exact question in the title honestly. Is the case for three-figure silver stronger? Yes, and now you know why, in a way no one can take from you. Not because someone promised you a price, because of arithmetic. Because the gold to silver ratio has a real historical range, and that range runs from the crushing compression of about 17 at the 1980 peak all the way out to about 100 in the depths of the early 90s. And today, that number sits far above its historical middle, on the cheap side of its own long life. Take a gold price near record highs, divide it by a ratio that simply returns toward the middle of where it has always lived, and the answer has 3 digits in it. That is not a dream. That is division. The case got stronger because gold keeps climbing on relentless central bank demand, while silver stays scarce and structurally in deficit, and the ratio has already started to compress. Every piece pushes the same way. If you have watched this far, you are exactly the person I made the next part for. I hold a free, one-on-one, no-obligation educational web conference specifically for folks who are 55 and older with $100,000 or more in their retirement savings. It is not a sales pitch and it is not a lecture. It is a real conversation about how to think about protecting and positioning what you have built using the exact tax-free, penalty-free approach the central banks effectively use to hold real metal. And here is the honest why now. No fake countdown, no pressure. The best time to make a calm, clear-headed decision about protection is precisely when nothing feels like an emergency, when you still have room to think before the crowd arrives and the window narrows. That moment is right now, while it is still quiet. If you are watching this on your television, just scan the QR code on your screen to reserve your spot. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to jeffreedguide.com and book a time that works for you. Mention that you watched this all the way to the end. Remember the two ends of that range. About 17 at the top of the last great run, when silver had nearly caught gold, and about 100 in the years the world had forgotten it. The whole story of a three-figure silver price lives in the distance between those two numbers. The desks are counting on you never learning to read it. Now you can. And that changes everything about how you hold your ground the next time they try to shake you out of it.